ingredients. Will you recommend the Job Guide 360 interview guide to prospective job seekers?
Sure, I will. The guide is detailed and very comprehensive.
If you, like so many of us, have ever stood in the grocery aisle wondering, how did someone invent that new chip flavor or, perfect that high-protein yogurt? This deep dive is definitely your answer. You're asking how the food we eat gets invented, right? That whole mix of science, creativity, and business needed to get an idea onto the shelf.
It really is an invisible process, isn't it? You see the final product, looks great, tastes great, hopefully, but you don't see the rigorous technical side, the intense teamwork.
Yeah, the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Exactly. And the quality assurance that goes into it. What we've pulled together today is really the core blueprint. We're looking at the essential steps for success in food product development, or FPD.
Okay, so our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to dissect that blueprint. We're using an expert process guide as our source here. We're going from that initial concept idea all the way to a nationwide launch.
And we'll hit everything. Spotting trends, analyzing taste data, statistically, the works.
And I guess the first big takeaway is that FPD is super structured, right? It's a multi-stage thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's never just a eureka moment in someone's kitchen. I mean, sometimes maybe the idea starts there, but the product itself, it's engineered.
Okay, let's unpack this blueprint then, starting right at the beginning. Concept to launch. Our sources lay out 5 key stages. Can you walk us through that initial process?
Sure. Stage 1 is always market research. You've got to identify real consumer needs, emerging trends. You need to know what gap you're actually filling.
Right. You can't invent in a vacuum. Got to solve a problem, even if the problem is I need a new kind of crunchy snack.
Pretty much. Then stage 2 is concept development. This is where the idea gets more solid, and it has to align with the brand strategy. Is it healthy, premium, value? And crucially, with what the production facility can actually make. That last part is, well, it's key.
Ah, okay. So it's got to be feasible technically and make sense for the brand right from the get-go. You can't pitch a fancy artisanal bread if your factory only does, extruded cereals.
Exactly right. Then you hit the lab. That's prototyping and sensory evaluations. This is the iterative work, refining the formula, tweaking taste, texture, how it looks.
The trial and error bit?
Lots of it. Once it passes muster internally, you move to stage 4. Collaboration with QA and production. This is all about the scale-up trials, making sure you can make it big.
And then finally
launch, stage 5, which means the product's stability is verified, it's safe, and really importantly, it hits the cost targets, ready for the masses.
Okay, but hold on. Before you even get to stage 1, market research, you need to know what consumers might want. How do these FPD pros actually stay ahead? How do they spot those opportunities?
They're basically professional trend trackers and risk managers, you could say.
Yeah.
They're constantly monitoring trend reports. Think big outfits like Mintel, Innova Market Insights.
Right, the industry watchers.
Yeah, and these reports aren't just guesses. They use serious data to quantify what consumers are starting to demand. They also hit the big food expos, see what competitors are up to, what innovators are doing, and social media, of course. Tracking that for early signals.
That covers the immediate market vibes. But for real innovation, they must be looking further out too, right?
Absolutely. That's where academic journals come in. They're continuously reviewing research on new ingredient tech. Think alternative proteins, novel natural processing aids, things that could enable genuinely disruptive products maybe years down the line. It's a full 360-degree view, always looking ahead.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Our material mentioned a specific success story, didn't it? Something about hitting trends just right.
Yeah, it was a high-protein snack bar developed for, active consumers. Its success wasn't luck. It was really strategic. They specifically chose natural sweeteners and focused on plant-based protein.
Ah, so hitting 2 big trends at once. High nutrition and clean label. That's smart.
Exactly. That combination, smart trend alignment, plus the technical skill to use those better for your ingredients, effectively led to really strong market acceptance. Sales actually beat at forecasts, proving the market was definitely ready.
That technical execution piece, it brings us right to the science side. Taste and time. We all get that taste testing happens, but the sources suggest it's way more structured than just, hey, try this. How do they analyze taste with actual data?
It kicks off internally. An internal panel assesses specific things: color, flavor, aroma, texture. This first step is really like a quality gate. filtering out prototypes that just, won't work consistently or won't scale up properly.
I bet that internal panel is tough. I mean, the R&D folks might love it, but that doesn't mean the average shopper will, right?
That's the critical difference. If a prototype gets past the internal team, then it goes to external consumer testing. And we're talking statistically significant samples here. It's not just asking opinions, it's collecting rigorous data.
Wow. What tools do they use?
Key tools are hedonic scales, where consumers rate how much they like something on a scale, maybe 1 to 9. And also preference mapping.
Preference mapping? Why not just ask, do you like it?
Because a simple yes or no doesn't tell you why. Preference mapping statistically links those liking scores to specific sensory descriptions, like texture, sweetness, saltiness. If you see low scores correlating with, say, high grittiness.
Then you know exactly what to fix.
Precisely. You can make targeted changes based on data, making sure the product actually meets what consumers want, not just what the R&D team thinks is best.
Okay, that's the taste part, ensuring people want it. Now for time, shelf life. Super critical for safety, for logistics, everything. What are the main ways they test how long a product lasts?
They typically run 2 types of tests, often at the same time. Accelerated testing and real-time testing. Accelerated uses like higher temperatures and humidity to mimic aging quickly, give you a fast predictor.
It's like fast-forwarding time.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
But real-time testing is the gold standard. That's monitoring the product over its actual expected shelf life under normal storage conditions. Takes longer, obviously, but it's the ultimate validation.
And what exactly are they looking for during these tests? Spoilage.
It's 3 main things they track over time. First, microbiological growth. That's the safety aspect. Second, sensory degradation. Does the taste fade? Does the texture get weird?
Right.
And third, chemical changes like fats going rancid through oxidation.
Because even if it's technically safe to eat, if it tastes awful after 3 months, it's a commercial failure.
You got it. All that data gets statistically analyzed to set the safe consumption periods and the right storage conditions, and this has to be locked down, fully validated way before launch.
Okay, it's clear this deep science has to constantly wrestle with business realities.
Which brings us to that balancing act. Innovation versus cost. That sounds like a permanent headache.
It's probably the toughest negotiation in FPD, honestly. The target cost per unit. That gets defined before development even kicks off, often down to fractions of a cent. Wow.
So innovation isn't just about throwing in the fanciest new ingredient. It's about being clever, using available resources creatively, maybe finding cost-effective substitutions, or sourcing locally.
But wait, if you start subbing ingredients for cheaper ones or sourcing differently, doesn't that risk messing with the taste or quality the consumer expects? How do you keep it premium or just good on a tight budget?
That's where the technical skill really shines. Maybe you swap an expensive fruit puree for a blend of concentrated juices that nails the same flavor profile but costs less. Or maybe you optimize the baking process to use less energy, lowering manufacturing cost without even touching the ingredients. The goal is always hitting that target sensory experience within strict financial limits.
And sometimes you get thrown a curveball. Something external forces a change, like a supply issue.
Yeah, the sources had a great example of that. A key natural flavoring for a popular drink suddenly became unavailable. Big supply shortage. Crisis mode.
Oof, what did they do?
The R&D team had to scramble. Find alternative suppliers, test a whole bunch of different flavor blends to match the original taste.
Just to keep the product on the shelf.
Right. But here's the interesting part. They actually used the crisis to make improvements. The final successful new version. It didn't just maintain the quality. During reformulation, they tweaked some processing aids, and it ended up improving the drink's shelf stability. And, as a bonus, it lowered production costs long-term.
Wow. Turning a problem into an advantage, that's smart. But what happens if the team just misses the mark? The consumer testing comes back negative. People just don't like it.
Well, they don't see it as just failure. That negative feedback is actually really valuable data. The job then becomes drilling into why. Use that preference mapping we talked about. Is it too salty? Is the color off-putting? Is the texture wrong?
Find the specific problem.
Exactly. Then you run targeted, small-scale reformulation tests to fix that specific issue. It becomes iterative. You don't just ditch the whole concept. You refine the execution based on what consumers told you.
So the FPD process isn't necessarily about nailing it first try, but more about having a really disciplined system for rapid improvement.
That's a great way to put it. Continuous improvement, iteration, which leads us nicely into compliance and scale up. Because Getting a perfect formula in the lab is one thing.
Making sure it's safe and consistently reproducible for millions of people is a whole different challenge.
It's a totally different ballgame.
So how do they tackle safety and compliance right from the start, before anything even gets made?
It has to begin with ingredient sourcing. Every single supplier, every ingredient needs to meet really strict standards. We're talking HACCP, that's Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, plus all the local regulations.
Can you quickly explain HACCP for listeners maybe not in the food world? Why is it so fundamental?
Sure. HACCP is about prevention. Instead of just testing the final product and hoping it's okay, you systematically identify potential hazards, biological, chemical, physical, at every single step of the process, from raw ingredients coming in to storage to cooking to packaging. And then you put controls in place specifically to prevent those hazards. It's proactive safety. And this whole system requires super tight collaboration with the quality assurance or QA team. They verify everything, labeling accuracy, allergens, making sure you meet FDA rules here or EFSA rules in Europe. This happens months before launch.
Right. Compliance ensures safety. Scale-up ensures consistency. That 10,000th bottle has to taste identical to the 10th test batch. What's a common scale-up challenge they mentioned?
A classic one cited was a dairy beverage. They had issues with texture consistency when they moved from the small R&D pilot equipment to the huge factory lines.
But wait, if the lab formula is right, why isn't it just like hitting copy-paste on the factory floor? What changes?
The physics. The big production equipment applies different forces, shear forces specifically. Think about pumps moving huge volumes versus small ones.
Yeah.
In that dairy drink example, the high shear from the factory homogenizer was messing with the protein structure, making the final product thin or grainy in the large batches.
Nightmare scenario. How did they fix it?
It took the R&D scientists working hand in glove with the process engineers on the factory floor. They had to tweak production settings, things like homogenization pressure, mixing times, running trials, until they could replicate the lab texture consistently in those massive batches. That link between R&D and the factory, absolutely vital.
Let's touch on something that's increasingly important. Sustainability. How does that get woven into this whole process early on?
It gets integrated on a couple of levels usually. First, ingredient choices may be favoring eco-friendly options or locally sourced stuff to cut transport emissions. Second, looking at the whole product lifecycle footprint. Meaning things like reducing packaging waste using recyclable materials, maybe lighter materials, and also optimizing manufacturing. Like if you can reformulate a cookie to bake 2 minutes faster, think about the energy saved over millions of cookies. It adds up.
Okay, so if you pull all these threads together, cost, taste, safety, sustainability, what are the absolute biggest hurdles facing FPD professionals today?
The sources point to 3 major headwinds right now. 1, developing healthier options that don't compromise on taste. That's a huge challenge. 2, meeting those clean label demands from consumers, fewer ingredients, things people recognize.
Yeah, it's everywhere now.
It is. And 3, managing ingredient cost volatility. Prices for raw materials can swing wildly, and that creates massive, unpredictable business risk.
So what are the solutions? What are they exploring to tackle those big 3?
Well, they're leaning hard into innovation to try and solve these trade-offs, using things like natural flavor enhancers to keep taste high without artificial stuff, exploring novel processing like high-pressure processing to extend shelf life naturally, reducing reliance on preservatives, and a huge focus on alternative protein sources. Not just plant-based anymore, but looking at things like fermentation-derived or even cultivated proteins to navigate cost and sustainability pressures.
Tackling these definitely requires that team approach you mentioned earlier. This isn't a solo job in a lab coat.
Not even close. The teamwork aspect is stressed constantly in the source material. Early collaboration avoids incredibly expensive mistakes later on. You need marketing in early, making sure the sensory stuff matches the brand promise. QA needs to be involved right from sourcing. Procurement has to confirm they can actually get the ingredients at the right price before the formula gets locked.
Because otherwise you might launch this perfect product only to find out 3 months later you can't source that key natural colorant reliably or affordably.
Exactly that kind of scenario. Yeah. Teamwork prevents those failures.
Okay, last piece here. The tools. What specific software or tech helps them manage all this complexity? The data, the compliance, the costs?
Yeah, specialized software is definitely key. They rely heavily on things like Genesis R&D. That's huge for nutritional formulation and critically for generating compliant labels, nutrition facts, panels, ingredient lists, allergen callouts. They also use statistical packages like Minitab for digging into that complex sensory and shelf life data we talked about.
Why something specialized like Genesis? Can't they just use, like, Excel for the nutrition stuff?
Well, Genesis dynamically recalculates everything as you tweak the formula. And maybe more importantly, it stays updated with changing regulations, FDA rules, ESSA rules. If, say, the definition of dietary fiber changes legally, the software flags the impact on your label instantly. A static spreadsheet just can't do that reliably.
Makes sense.
But yeah, they definitely still use the trusty workhorse Microsoft Excel quite a bit too, especially for flexible cost modeling and running financial projections.
Okay, so pulling this all together, the big takeaway for you, the listener, is that food product development is this incredibly integrated machine. It needs deep technical chops, super creative problem solving, often under really tight deadlines.
Absolutely. It's a constant rapid cycle. They use techniques like rapid prototyping, testing multiple versions at once, parallel testing, just to keep the speed up while maintaining that scientific rigor.
Right.
Every single product you see on the shelf represents this constant negotiation, this balancing act between what consumers want, what science can deliver, and what the finances allow.
And it really changes how you look at the grocery store, doesn't it? Every single item is a result of balancing these forces: taste versus cost, innovation versus regulation, speed versus stability. That balance. That's the real secret ingredient, I guess.
It truly is. So maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Thinking about those trends we discussed, clean label, alternative proteins, cost pressures, which one of those challenges do you think will force the biggest, most game-changing innovations in the food world over, say, the next 5 years? It's definitely a race worth watching.